Room was filled with flowers, laughter, and the sparkle of a wedding worth millions, yet the groom stood frozen, staring at something that shattered his entire world in a single heartbeat. Just hours before saying "I do," the billionaire groom stumbled upon a truth so devastating, so unexpected, that it broke him in ways no amount of wealth could repair. What he saw didn't just ruin the wedding. It exposed a betrayal so deep that it threatened everything he believed about love, trust, and loyalty. And as the world celebrated what was supposed to be the happiest day of his life, he was forced to face a reality darker than anyone could have imagined. But how did a fairy tale romance turn into a nightmare? And what secret was his bride hiding behind that perfect smile? Welcome back to Swift Tale, where we dive into powerful, emotional, and unbelievable real-life, inspired stories that leave you thinking long after the video ends. And if you're visiting the channel for the very first time, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because honestly, what would you do if you discovered the person you were about to marry was living a lie? Before we unravel this shocking story, here's a quick look at what makes it matter so much. This isn't just a tale of betrayal, it's a reminder of how love can blind us, how trust can be manipulated, and how even the strongest people can fall victim to deception. It shows the danger of ignoring red flags, the importance of emotional awareness, and the painful truth that not everyone who stands beside you actually stands with you. As we walk through the billionaire groom's journey from love to heartbreak, this story shines a light on the courage it takes to confront painful truths, and the strength required to walk away from the person you thought would be your forever. And with that, the story begins. Before the world knew him as the heartbroken billionaire groom, Adrian Hale was the kind of man people admired from a distance, brilliant, disciplined, and quietly powerful. Born into a wealthy but fractured family, he learned early that money could build empires but couldn't guarantee loyalty. His father's coldness and his mother's absence carved a sense of loneliness into him that even success couldn't erase. Despite this, Adrian never allowed bitterness to define him. Instead, he poured himself into his work, building a tech empire that made him one of the youngest billionaires in the country. Yet with every achievement, the emptiness within him grew. He longed for something real, connection, partnership, a love that wasn't tied to his wealth or legacy. That was when he met her, Serena. Their paths crossed on a stormy evening in a small coastal cafe, the kind of place Adrian visited when he wanted to disappear from his corporate world. She walked in drenched from the rain, her laughter bright, her eyes full of warmth. She didn't stare, didn't whisper, didn't treat him like a celebrity. Instead, she apologized for bumping into him, flashed a shy smile, and offered to buy him a coffee to make up for it. For a man used to being approached with agendas, her simplicity disarmed him. Conversation flowed easily. She spoke about dreams, adventure, and finding meaning in the little moments, things Adrian never had time to think about. In the days that followed, their connection deepened. Serena seemed to understand him in a way no one ever had. She made him feel human, not just wealthy. She laughed at his dry humor, challenged his perspective, and added color to his strictly organized world. For the first time in years, Adrian found himself looking forward to something other than work. Friends noticed the change, how he smiled more, how he talked about someone with genuine admiration. His world, once driven by logic and ambition, now had something softer woven into it, hope. But even in those early days, there were moments, fleeting, subtle, when Serena's stories changed slightly or her expressions slipped into something unreadable. Adrian brushed them aside, convincing himself that everyone had complexities, that maybe he was overthinking because of his past. After all, wasn't he finally experiencing the love he had been waiting for? And little did he know, those small, quiet inconsistencies were the first shadows of a truth that would one day break him. As weeks turned into months, Adrian and Serena's relationship blossomed with the kind of intensity people write novels about. Adrian had dated before, but nothing ever felt like this. Serena made him feel seen, something his wealth had long stolen from him. She encouraged him to take breaks from work, dragged him out for spontaneous road trips, and sometimes showed up at his office with homemade pastries just to brighten his day. Their love story painted the illusion of perfection. The media caught wind of their romance, of course, but Serena handled the attention with effortless grace. She never seemed intimidated by his status, nor dazzled by his wealth. To Adrian, this only proved she was genuine, a rare soul untouched by greed or vanity. Their connection intensified quickly, and so did their public life. They became the couple everyone adored, glamorous, charitable, and always smiling. Serena fit effortlessly into Adrian's world, or so it seemed. She won over his board members, charmed the press, and even softened the skepticism of some of Adrian's closest friends. Yet beneath the glittering surface, there was a faint tension he could never quite name. Serena occasionally dodged questions about her past, changing the subject with practiced ease. She had no close family, few friends, and a backstory filled with gaps, but she always gave him just enough warmth to drown his doubts. Love, after all, has a way of silencing the warning bells. One evening, under sky lit by fireworks from a charity gala, Adrian felt something shift inside him. He looked at Serena laughing beside him and thought, "This is the person I want for the rest of my life." He convinced himself that whatever mysteries lingered in her past didn't matter. Love was about trust, wasn't it? Within days, he planned the perfect proposal. A private sunset dinner on a cliff overlooking the ocean, musicians playing softly nearby, rose petals floating in the breeze. When he knelt down and opened the velvet box, Serena's eyes filled with tears, beautiful, dramatic, cinematic tears. She said yes before he could even finish his speech, throwing her arms around him as photographers hiding in the distance captured the moment the world would soon obsess over. But while the engagement felt like a dream come true, not everyone shared Adrian's excitement. His sister noticed a flicker of calculation in Serena's smile. His best friend couldn't shake the feeling that Serena was too perfect, too practiced. Even the household staff whispered about her late-night phone calls and unexplained outings. Adrian ignored them all. He believed in Serena, or perhaps he simply needed to believe. Because after a lifetime spent guarded behind walls of wealth and distrust, he finally felt vulnerable. And vulnerability, when placed in the wrong hands, becomes the easiest thing to break. As the wedding preparations began, Adrian envisioned a celebration filled with elegance and sincerity, a day that would mark a new beginning. Serena, however, seemed to have something very different in mind. From the moment planning started, she took complete control, insisting on managing guest lists, vendors, and even the wedding schedule without consulting him. At first, Adrian interpreted her enthusiasm as excitement. She claimed she wanted everything to be perfect for their special day. But perfection, it seemed, came with secrets. Serena guarded every detail fiercely, refusing help, constantly changing plans, and growing strangely defensive whenever Adrian asked even the smallest question. When he requested to invite a few childhood friends, she dismissed them, saying the wedding needed to be exclusive. When his mother asked to see the seating arrangements, Serena snapped, accusing her of interfering. The woman who once brought warmth into his world now carried a sharpness he didn't know how to handle. As weeks passed, things only grew more unsettling. Adrian began noticing inconsistencies in Serena's stories, dates that didn't match, names she couldn't explain, and friends she claimed to have but never introduced. One evening, he overheard her on the phone, speaking in a hushed, urgent tone. When he gently asked who she was talking to, she froze and quickly ended the call, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just wedding stress," she claimed. But stress didn't explain the fear in her voice, nor the way she clutched her phone as if it held the key to something she couldn't afford him to see. Even his staff noticed her odd behavior. She roamed parts of the mansion without permission, snuck into his office under the guise of looking for a pen, and asked unusual questions about his finances and legal documents. When his head of security informed him that Serena had attempted to access restricted areas of the estate, Adrian felt a chill creep up his spine. He confronted her gently, not wanting to accuse her outright, but she burst into tears, accusing him of not trusting her. In the end, he apologized, despite knowing deep down something wasn't right. Love can be blinding, especially when fear of losing it becomes stronger than the desire for truth. But the final red flag came during a meeting with the wedding coordinator. Serena insisted on hiring unfamiliar vendors, people no one had worked with before, while rejecting reputable ones Adrian had personally recommended. She demanded that certain guests be seated far away from her, claiming bad energy, and requested that the ceremony be held earlier than planned, for reasons she refused to explain. The wedding planner later pulled Adrian aside, whispering, There's something off about her. I've planned hundreds of weddings, and brides don't behave like this unless they're hiding something." Those words echoed in Adrian's mind for days. Yet each time he tried to probe deeper, his heart fought his logic. He wanted Serena to be the woman he believed she was, the one who brought light into his lonely world. But the shadows around her were growing, and as the wedding day drew nearer, the uneasiness in his chest grew heavier, whispering a truth he was too afraid to admit. Serena wasn't just hiding details, she was hiding herself. The night before the wedding should have been a time of joy, nerves, and anticipation, but for Adrian, it felt like standing on the edge of something he couldn't name. The mansion was quiet, the soft glow of golden lights casting warm shadows across the hallways. Guests were arriving from around the world, filling the estate with excitement, yet Adrian felt strangely disconnected from it all. A knot of unease tightened in his chest, heavier than anything he had felt before. He kept telling himself that pre-wedding anxiety was normal, that every groom had doubts, that maybe he was overthinking. But deep inside, a small, persistent voice whispered that something was wrong, and that voice grew louder with every passing hour. Late that evening, while walking through the garden to clear his mind, Adrian received a message from an unknown number. At first, he thought it was spam, until he saw the words, "You deserve to know the truth before it's too late." His breath caught. He reread the message, heart pounding, trying to steady his thoughts. Before he could reply, another message followed. "She's not who you think she is. Be careful." There was no name, no explanation, no evidence, yet the message pierced through him like a blade. Panic warred with disbelief. Was this some jealous ex, a prank, or something much worse? He tried to shake it off, returning inside to find Serena. She was in her dressing suite, surrounded by makeup artists and stylists, smiling brightly as they prepared her for tomorrow's ceremony. When he walked in, she rushed over with a perfect, glowing smile, throwing her arms around him. But as he hugged her, something felt off, her body tense, her breath uneven, her eyes guarded. She pulled away too quickly, claiming stress, claiming exhaustion. Adrian wanted to ask her directly about the strange message, but when he looked into her eyes, fear stopped him. What if she thought he didn't trust her? What if it ruined the night? So he swallowed his concerns and forced a smile. But the universe wasn't finished with him. Later, as he passed by the private veranda, he heard Serena speaking softly on the phone again. Her voice trembled with urgency. "Tomorrow, after the ceremony, everything has to be ready," she whispered. "He doesn't suspect anything." The words hit Adrian like a blow. He froze, hidden behind the wall, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. The tone wasn't that of a bride finalizing wedding plans. This was secrecy, strategic, cold, calculated. Before he could hear more, Serena suddenly ended the call. Adrian didn't move, didn't breathe. He felt the ground shift beneath him, a chill creeping up his spine. He returned to his room, unable to sleep. Memories of every small red flag played in his mind. Her guarded phone, her inconsistent stories, her strange reactions. He had ignored them all, choosing love over instinct. But now, in the dead silence of the night, those instincts screamed at him. He stared at the engagement ring she had kissed just hours earlier, wondering if it symbolized love or a trap. As midnight approached, a knock sounded at his door. It was the head of security, his expression serious. "Sir," he said quietly, "I think there's something you need to see." Adrian's stomach twisted. He followed him down the hallway, feeling as though he were walking toward the unraveling of his entire life. And in that moment, he knew, for better or worse, the truth was waiting for him just beyond the next door. The entire cabin seemed to hold its breath as the atmosphere shifted from confusion to something far more intense, an undeniable change in power. For so long, the flight attendant had moved with an air of superiority, brushing off questions, dismissing concerns, and treating the woman as if she didn't belong in first class. But now that confidence had drained from her posture, replaced with a stiff, frightened stillness. The murmurs from passengers grew louder, rippling through the row like a rising tide, as they realized they had witnessed a serious act of discrimination unfold right before their eyes. The woman, calm, composed, and radiating an authority no one had expected, looked directly at the attendant, her voice low but unwavering. Every word she spoke dismantled the attendant's excuses with surgical precision. The more she explained what had happened, the darker the attendant's expression became, as though she understood her career was balanced on the sharpest edge. Even other crew members froze, uncertain whether to step in or step back. The captain had been notified. Several passengers were already recording. What began as a humiliating attempt to belittle a black woman in first class had now become a moment in which the truth was impossible to hide. And standing in the center of the aisle, with the eyes of the entire cabin on her, the woman made it clear. Respect was not optional, and mistreating the wrong person could change everything in the blink of an eye. As the tension thickened in the cabin, the woman finally exhaled, her composure as steady as if she had been preparing for this moment her entire life. She reached calmly into her elegant leather bag, the same bag the attendant had insulted only minutes earlier, and pulled out a sleek folder, unmarked, pristine, and unmistakably official. The passengers closest to her leaned forward instinctively, sensing that whatever she was about to reveal would change the direction of the entire confrontation. The flight attendant's face went pale, her confidence cracking like thin glass. With measured grace, the woman unfolded a set of documents and held them at her side as she spoke, not loudly, but with a commanding clarity that traveled through every row. She revealed that she wasn't just a first-class passenger. She wasn't simply someone with money or status. She was, in fact, the primary shareholder of the airline and effectively the person who signed off on every major decision the company made. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Phones recording the moment trembled slightly in passengers' hands. The flight attendant stumbled back a step, as if the weight of the revelation had physically hit her. The woman didn't brag or gloat. She simply explained the truth with unshakable dignity, as though she had no desire to embarrass anyone, only to make clear that dignity and respect should never depend on skin color, seat number, or appearance. In that instant, the balance of power flipped completely, and everyone aboard understood they had just witnessed a moment that would be talked about long after the plane landed. The cabin fell into a heavy silence as the weight of the woman's revelation settled over everyone. The flight attendant, once so confident in her authority, now stood frozen, eyes wide, lips parted, her entire posture collapsing under the realization of what she had done. The police officer who had been called stood uncertainly at her side, shifting awkwardly as he processed the truth. He had been summoned under false pretenses, manipulated into an unnecessary and potentially dangerous situation. Now, with the true identity of the woman revealed, he felt the sting of embarrassment and the unsettling awareness of how easily prejudice could turn a routine call into a moment of public humiliation. Passengers whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads, others recording discreetly, knowing well that this incident would likely make headlines by morning. The woman, however, didn't lash out. With calm authority, she directed her attention to the officer, explaining that she had no desire to escalate the matter further, only to ensure that incidents like this didn't happen again. Her voice carried a mix of disappointment and strength, the kind that makes listeners reflect deeply on their own biases. Then she turned to the attendant. For a moment, the two women stood face to face. The attendant trembled, blinking back tears, aware that her moment of careless judgment had spiraled into something far larger than she ever imagined. The woman didn't raise her voice. She simply explained that abuse of power, no matter how small, had consequences. It was in that quiet, controlled tone that the true gravity of the situation became undeniable. As the captain was called to the cabin and the airline's protocols kicked into motion, the entire plane watched, knowing they were witnessing accountability unfold in real time. As the captain entered the cabin, his expression shifted the moment he recognized the woman standing before him. Respect washed over his face, followed immediately by concern. He apologized sincerely, not as a formality, but as someone who understood the seriousness of what had transpired under his command. Passengers watched closely, their earlier discomfort now replaced by a sense of profound awareness. What began as a simple confrontation had evolved into a moment of truth, exposing how quickly judgment and bias could strip someone of dignity. The captain requested a private conversation with the woman, but she declined with calm grace, insisting that whatever was said should be heard by everyone present. She believed transparency mattered. She believed accountability shouldn't happen behind closed doors. Her voice was steady and warm as she addressed the passengers, explaining that this incident wasn't just about her or a single flight attendant. It was a reminder of how assumptions, fear, and unchecked authority could damage lives. The flight attendant stood trembling nearby, cheeks flushed with shame, understanding that she had not merely made a mistake, she had created a moment that would follow her long after this flight. The passengers nodded slowly as the woman continued, her words carrying the weight of lived experience and quiet strength. She reminded everyone that dignity isn't something granted by a seat assignment, skin color, or uniform. It's something everyone deserves automatically. In the stillness of the cabin, people began reflecting on their own biases, their own split-second judgments that they might have justified or ignored. Some felt guilty, others felt enlightened. And for many, this moment would become a personal turning point. By the time she finished, the energy in the cabin had shifted entirely. What began as conflict had transformed into a powerful lesson, one passengers would carry with them long after landing. As the plane continued toward its destination, the atmosphere settled into a thoughtful calm, the passengers still absorbing the profound moment they had witnessed. The woman returned to her seat with quiet dignity, her presence now carrying a powerful weight that no one aboard would ever forget. The flight attendant, shaken but visibly humbled, was escorted to the galley to await formal review from the airline, a reminder that positions of authority come with responsibility, not entitlement. By the time the aircraft touched down, the incident had transformed into something far deeper than a misunderstanding. It had become a lesson about respect, humility, and the courage to stand firm in one's truth without anger or retaliation. And now, as we wrap up this story here on Swift Tale, it's important to remember why tales like these matter. They show us that despite status, power, or wealth, what truly defines a person is how they treat others, especially when they believe no one important is watching. They remind us that prejudice still exists, often hidden beneath the surface, waiting for someone brave enough to expose it with grace rather than rage. So if you've made it this far, I want to say thank you for joining me on another powerful journey. And if this story moved you, even a little, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Swift Tale for more stories that inspire, challenge, and open our eyes. Drop a comment below and let me know what part of this tale impacted you the most. Your voice matters, your thoughts matter, and together we keep these conversations alive. Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay kind, and stay tuned for more compelling narratives that touch the heart and spark the mind.